feithe na manúr.
Tíl chaideach a an order. Order agus tús curr leis an gluthe le cheanne sa agus sile fachtaigh Emmett O'Connell Mánaí agus sáchaile dúir isteach a John Chrúine isteach go dtí David Campbell agus seansansa ag Cormac Costello seansa chóil túil agus Scott Fulham for sé siút síchúil na naid na hirbhí agus bhailtán ceann chiad ceann fachtansa anna luair fad ag Coman.
Well, cad mar sin de tús de blach lí sús an éan sin ó Emmett O'Connell Lero Brash Jachos Corna tusa búta go maithan seo Brenner an Rithó Cormac Costello an seochan an Lero de gafa Braníonn sé tras in the park a Scott Fulham tíbis dé agus isteach sa líonta an anna hús de blach lí agus anna chúil ó blach lí freisin.
One tidy, will take a shoe. Mahanson, the Joe, more the point kick. Ulrich Mahanson, Yod Shilif. Shilif fact again, a full start in Ishiga. Cormac Costello. Cormac Costello, with the stack of glue to get Kieran Kilkenny, and the Homasach, Lia Yanvigahin, and Parker Rohige, with the Lenicatoig, a shin twin to Anagasiga, Kieran Kilkenny.
Anna Kieran Kilkenny, Siller go bhfuil Black League mar trúir tíbis dé an seo chasta raisiar a chus clé an tam sin chuna a chur an trasnan ba job mór a dhéanamh ag Adrian Nolan má tá sé géirí Kieran Kilkenny a chumad fiún ach ag fannach leis an tam ar fád beidir umar go spás do Kieran an tam sin chun an scóra aimsú.
Kieran Kilkenny aimsú rís Kieran Kilkenny agus Adrian Nolan congracht an lína cúin Derek Slí dhéanamh da hén I mecht leis tá sé anna láidir Shellirach meádaige ceann das trasna go dtí Emmett O'Connell Emmett O'Connell tuair sé féile ana catóig bhuiilteige Emmett a bhíle cansan fada bóthain Conor Gleeson go dtí Edwin Murray go dtí James Shaughnessy go dtí Owen Walsh is agus Bertrú timplaid I bheithrú lechúil go dtí Edwin Murray Edward Gaffamach Dhéanamh lína cúgvéidir agus dahad tá leis an chaidir bheith fósaige ceann íseal fanna talún agus Ian Burke a heachta Ian Congrachtan Levlíneach Shillipin to go Higgins Robert McDade gidi Patrick O'Higgins last but the Lena Cookveders Tite Hoon gidi David Campbell in ish Patrick O'Higgins Wilterstach Achabe James Shaughnessy Yogi Hashimi Huwe gidi Cormac Costello Cormac Costello foes Wilter go hard to get Cormac Agus shin printed as to get Cormac Costello ach botúna bhí ann an son ag cosantóir na gailí Coman.
Ja, mé an sin a rís le James O'Shaughnessy just frabal líor dos a chor agus ní Russia an love mór a chur leis tugann sé isteach with Cormac Costello agus dénne sé go hanma is go maithe go bhfuil bearna géir chun dul isteach ar an tíb línar an lína Gerran sin agus Har an trasnan.
Isteach leis an gaiid go dtí Conor Rabbit Conor a dhéanamh slí go hen déanana catóig ceann mórár agus ceann crín bhuiilteige Har sé trasnán agus sin an bhearna míadathe an son nó an bhearna líadathe ábhidín an son ag an ngaileamh.
As ord scór ó sin ó Conor Rabbit tháinig sé tresan ar fácha chun an níor a bhuachan dom kick-taobh líon an sin hasan sé ar an chus jas agus tugann sé ar a rís chun é a chur Har an trasnan.
Bhuiilteige agus bhuiilte isteach go dtí Gród Armstrong Dacha John Cooney mar bhfuil Conor Rabbit go hard agus Rabbit go trín an tadna pointe go Rabbit Tá Rabbit ag immert go maithinú.
Tá sé rás a fáil agus Brenner sin bei Graham Hannigan a bhí a fiochasús Conor Rabbit an tam sin ach fós bhí sin an spás a cruthú chas agus chur Har an trasnan ord immert ó Conor Rabbit an tain imródas na gaile bhí chun cos a bhfuil trééis scór na aimseo an immert.
That's a go Higgins a teachta gaudir John Small John Small Dhéanana catóig ceann mór ard agus nis David Campbell a córagus sunnacha córach na chuine agus an bheachtaíontaid Lochálta go deasige fachtaige Scott Fulham annach chrín ar fad agus an dáinóma Dixon a bhíidir ganaon scór bhaid tá sé sin chuna ceart agus Scott Fulham.
Ja, ionach an scóir é sin is go bhaithe go cábhail na posta Braníonn sé suas agus seola sé Har an trasnan.
Gavin Ivory agus bhuiilte amach aige agus an bheachtaíonta an so agus an bhearna míadathe an so ag clia David Campbell is dóilm nó bhé a bhí ann in éan le.
Stocha go Kieran Kilkenny rinne sé an rud cheart bhí an Ilan Annig géir dos ó héna dó leis an léad an tam sin agus Har an trasnan.
Ní sé bheithe a gnéan chaid catan áda mar sin agus túscóir leis an tarna lechat so agus seachún an chaileh agus Shane Walsh agus chuir sé siút Cúgu sé faointí na go chabáin, Dibir sé go ma agus the béime tú caníil le háid a dalab gorta he dá clia, isteach sa chúna tugad í Conor Abbott farhaige mar go ma, scóp dianta go héad, imecht leis a rúthar farcur go héige, bir, a bóla na caide ceann mór ár, déile hana hír, tras na aige bháid agus sin ceann glúirtar fad an san ag Conor Abbott, an tríú prínta go Conor Cogan.
Sin ar aus ar fad, luar mar just cúpla nómar hin céco maith agus as abiatán, fear seos córna cúil, chasan sé, a ras ar a chusjas an sin, bran ar siod a scór, ort an éireach, is go maith go cáil na posta, har an trasnan, daimse sé scór sa céad, le beag nach chomá le sin, ach sin ar aus ar fad ó Conor Abbott.
Well, for sé anna gá chúla na chorca ísach le heile cheanna sé chailedar an inig chomá, agus se chuin áglí a mohalár na páilce. Marsin Hain, Shelif Kaituku, agus Ian Burke bol na category Grode Armstrong, County Ishel, Wintiga Shoot, Curavaris, Istachan Sugadin, Vermont Porke, Shane Mahan, Shane Lloyded, Farkurago Hege, Emachlish, Shelif Osige, Putve, Kauna Legas, in the year, Ashi Auna, Frinter Fadenson.
Well, tá fur na ggéir spraga chéimar dhéanaar scór na Conor Abbott agus an sin sé mahan an tam sin. Thuspáin sé loideocht, thuspáin sé glicas an seoch an teach do rasisteach.
Mar sin, i géirice, Shane Walsh, a thucaigh cansa. I hínig inis agus Ross O'Hanlon na bheith a dhéchant le chéile. Á na birtacha, na hendan eile. Wastíirdan líne. So ige Robert O'Donnell, Shane Bodowi, Ross O'Hanlon, ceann anna hochtach da súd, anna hochtach da Shane Walsh. Shane in achta step, a tút fé, Rasper agus cold an ganibh agus Shane Walsh agus tá péin na trí aimse higan bharsa hana hénig.
Well, íontach an tínos an sin, is Jack sa líon dan agus an kickchart, ísel ar an talamh, áte bhfuil sé fluc golóir chun a sleanú Jack sa líon dan, anna chríoch, tús íontach an gaile bhí cúig nómid is Jack sa dara lehan seo, tá sí chun chuún ar gá chúlín rééis do bheith tífhir de chathair.
Machan so gudi Jack McCaffrey, Jack yn at leis y rwhar, Jack yn at fos a chan haid, wynta go, agos e cwrdd o brille, agos haid palais diantar Jack, ach ni'r seda, Rod Armstrong, Befrw, agos siansyn so i Mohan, wachta gydas ag Shane Mohan, gawn i eisiau pan y talwn, anna iasar fad, wynta go, Cwrdd aras ysdach sa chwn i gyda Conor Abbott, Conor Befrw, yn eisiau Graham Hennigan, Conor Maclish gyffwl, dyn i bert gwrdd o hygad Ian Burke, siams ag Ian, agos yn peint ag Ian, pan cwl glan na dyrn y ffwrdd mynish.
Íontach an scóir sin ó Ian Burke, a rís sé Conor Abbott sé, mahanach chur an líród isteach with Conor Abbott, a rís spáin sé glicas an seo, a chamad an líród, chahan sé amach é chuig Ian Burke, agus sásta golóir é chur an trasna an seo.
Taka histechan sa, Niall Scully, snolum taka histechta ó ha clia. Johnson, chancer score at sa ga ha clia, tulla bwelta an bautas an miabra, agus gat Fulham, agus Shellivit sa, Adrian Nolan. Adrian Nolan, a quintago, agus Shahay, sa Paul Mannon, agus an Bartian, aga Paul, an hiet score, sa tarna na begus an grochse sin chisiet.
Na anna chud over chun an scóir sin aim siún, líród ag na gaile bheith teachtamach, míag, Scott Fullan an tam sin, boot an seoch agus é teachtamach le Adrian Nolan, ach a míag ar chur trúr faoi brú ag an éidir na cowrú leis.
Jack McCaffrey, mar sin. Agus an gaile bhíris áclí a córacar dalanis, Paul Mannon, Slána hit, Eide hynna hasaf, Shahay, Kieran Kilkenny, Kieran anna iarachta, Kieran, agus tá siad yn cósgód fúman.
Rás ar fád ó Kieran Kilkenny, ordim roir the Black League go ddísa an nua, agus cais sé chun an chean sin a chur thar an trasdan. Genta go maith tal manion an líród a bhuacan, dar breníar sin de scór anna hábhacht the Black League, chóscór an seo, agus Nino genóid fág agin cadma jarla chríoch a bhaid agin inis.
Céidir nómatí brise, cadathe ag an réitúid, mar sin. An counter, bwylta ag Jack McCaffrey, bwylta go maithige, isteach an sogadi Niall Scully, isteach a Lashley, agus Shahay, John Small and his chance against counter, well, Harrison Drasnan, and it's actually out, Harrison, Drasnan, and so let's look at Shady, John Small, agus Aglia, count the stock lead, that I'm Shemley on the full score.
Anna score an sin, anna fast trastan the pork an seoch an lír an pork osclú suas beagán.
Built to Gadasiga, Kieran, Gadin Isle Scully, Chansigan Isle, Lynn Horan, Wiltish Dachalash League, Shoot, Gadi Scott Fulham, Amachan So, Gadi Kieran, Kilkenny, and Durache Fake, Yannick Folin, Began Yanachanish, Kieran Kilkenny, Durache Fake, Built to get Kieran, Count Cloterfat, Green Deed of Edward the Quilly, Agus and Sheo Cooley, Nigga Kieran Kilkenny.
Should have out far up here on Kelly has bunches of Cade Lack, Cooper scored and a Cuss Clay, Orishan Shinless and Cush Lasso Tom Shin. Kamad Shin Lero Coop Lord, Duskel Shay Sus, Bugan in Dogus, Shoal Shay Haran Trasnon.
Me, O'Shea and Coleman Goggins, we are commentators for this afternoon's All-Ireland Minor Semi-Final. Colin O'Rourke, Pat Spillane and Joe Brody here with me in our Croke Park studio. Good exciting second half. Colin flowed back and forth and Dublin sealing it in the end.
Yeah, it looked for a long time as if Dublin were believing their own publicity, and Galway had them on the rack. And I think after 38 minutes they had scored a goal and 4 points without reply in the second half, and then had 3 or 4 bad wides when they could have pushed on and really killed out the game. Dublin were lucky that they had somebody like Kieran Kilkenny, and it was typically young fellas. The Dubs lost their way completely for about 10 minutes of the second half, but Galway, I suppose, had hit the front too soon, and it gave them 20 minutes to get back into it. They were lucky to have Kieran Kilkenny and John Small and a few players like that who held their heads when others were losing theirs, and Niall Scully, the sub, came on, made a big difference. So Dublin have staggered into the final, but it's a good way for them to get into it.
It is, but I suppose again from a Galway point of view, having taken the lead, Pat, in that second half, they kicked some bad wides and bad options when they had the game in their grasp.
Well, the move of Shane Maughan into full forward worked because they were delivering the ball quick and fast, and they got a goal and 3 or 4 points in those first few minutes. But then they started overplaying it, and they went 20 minutes, as Colm said, without scoring.
What with scoring chances?
They kicked 6 wides in the second half, and if you look at it, out of the 8 forwards they played today, 7 of them got 1 point from play. Conor Rabbit was the only fella that contributed a few points from play. So when Galway will look back in this game as a game that probably they weren't the better team, but they had chances. They had chances in the second half to win that game. Dublin will look at it, like I said, they staggered into the final, but if there's a lesson there for their seniors, it's there today with the minors, because this was a team that seemed to believe the hype, because to win a game you've got to make things happen. The Dublin minors weren't making things happen. They weren't showing for the ball. They were sort of believing all the hype about them. So it's a good lesson for them. You know, it's a kick in the pants they needed. But like I said, I thought it was a very poor. Last Sunday was disappointing, and today's semi-final as well. I felt the standard was quite poor.
Okay, Dublin were leading 4 points at half time, Joe, and as Pat said, kind of were at that stage. It was only 4 points, but they were certainly in control of it. Then Galway made this comeback, got a couple of scores, and then got the penalty.
There was a classic example the second half of how to solo run your way to defeat. I mean, Galway had the game in their hands. They'd gone 3 points up. Whenever they put the man mountain, Shane Maughan, on the edge of the square, who's also 2-footed, it changed the dynamic of the game. But then, I mean, they began then to solo run and solo run and solo run, and eventually they had to take Shane Maughan off the edge of the square. The net effect of all the solo running was that Galway lost their momentum at a time when they were completely in the driving seat. I mean, Dublin were nervous, like young fellas can become. The pressure was on them. You know, they were playing with lead in their shoes. I mean, Kieran Whelan was out there and he was groaning with exasperation beside us. What saved Dublin? Solo running. The disease of solo running, you know, and the number 11 in particular for Galway. I mean, at one stage he got a free, and I did swear to myself that he's going to solo run this. He's going to take it on in a solo run. And that was the problem, because it killed their momentum. Ultimately, Dublin were playing with their number 2 as a sweeper in front of the 2 full forwards. And watching Galway coming solo running up the field was manna from heaven. And that in the end was the difference, coupled with a couple of brilliant individual scores from the Dublin forwards, in particular Kilkenny, who scored a point that Bernard Brogan would be proud of.
He did, Colin, but in fairness to Dublin, you know, having gone through all of that phase in the second half, they then steadied themselves in the end. And I mean, they got the scores. I mean, they got the scores in the end that sealed it for them.
Yeah, but it was individual play more than good team play that won it for Dublin, and John Small coming up there from centre back, who had a good game all through the game, and of course Kilkenny, who looks a cut above most minors. He's very composed on the ball, takes on his man, then switches back onto his right foot, and he kicked a brilliant point earlier in the game as well. So he's a sort of a